1 in 5 suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays, usually with Marla and Dave, but today it's with just Dave. Anyway, you know what? I'm joined in studio. Well, before I get to that, I want to remind you to text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 and support our A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign. And today we're welcoming back two of our favorite past guests, Dr. Will...
I wish.
Dr. Craig Smith and Will Sterling, the guys from History Rated R. You know what? Their motto is history is full of effed up ish, but what are we going to do? Pretend like it never happened? Well, Will is an actor and a writer. I'm just reminding you guys from the last time they were on the show. Dr. Smith, and I couldn't resist saying Dr. Smith, is a speechwriter for former presidents Ford and H.W. Bush. And today they're going to walk us through the archeology of mental illness, which is based on Foucault and Freud, as well as take us on a journey through the history of the film industry and how it portrays mental illness among men and women. Buckle up. This is going to be great. Now, I want to remind you, the last time they were on the show, we were just catching up on their podcast, again, History Rated R, and they were saying, we were remarking that they have martinis on their show, and we were like, well, you didn't bring us any martinis, and today, Marla's not here, but guess what? They have martinis. So buckle up. It's going to be a fun ride. We will be right back.
Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley believe it doesn't take much to make life a little better for our neighbors, coworkers, friends, our family members, even our children who suffer with mental illness. When you support our A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign, you are doing your part to erase the stigma surrounding mental illness. For just $1 today, or $1 a day for 1 week, just $7, we can look forward to a future that does not include the unfortunate and uncomfortable stares, bullying, and the subsequent isolation that our loved ones who suffer with brain differences deal with. Text the word GIVE, that's G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 to donate. A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away. Brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley.
Okay, we welcome back to the show Craig and Will. You know what? Marla couldn't be with us today because we're moving my father-in-law, her dad, in with us, so she's down there packing them up. So she's doing her love thing this week. But hey,
how dare she?
You know what? Right before we get started, Will, what kind of martinis are you making?
Oh, so we've got your proper gin martini over here.
Nice.
Yeah, now Craig and I are. This is Uncle Craig's recipe, though. He puts a little splash of vodka in there.
Okay.
So, primarily gin with a little bit of vodka, and of course your dry vermouth.
Yes.
And then I've got some fancy olives.
Nice.
They are piri stuffed olives.
Nice.
Kind of spicy.
You know, I love olives.
Do you?
Green olives are actually my favorite.
Well, then this is for you.
I'm in luck.
There you go.
Well, Craig, tell us about what is the archaeology of mental illness based on Foucault and Freud?
Yeah, Michel Foucault does a number of archaeologies, by which he means he's going to dig deep into a subject.
Okay.
So he did a book on mental illness, and he said that there were 4 epochs of the way we treat mental illness through history. And the first he talked about was how in the ancient world they kind of needed to rationalize irrational events. So, Athens gets hit by a hurricane. Why? Well, because Neptune's mad at us.
Right. The gods.
The gods are mad at us.
Yeah.
And in religion, we had to rationalize the fall of man. And so you have the Adam and Eve story that rationalizes what's going on there. The what?
We got some mixing going on over here.
That's very important.
Our mixologist is very busy right now.
And during this period, eventually you get into the medieval period, and they've got witches, and I mean that's featured like in Macbeth, where the witches predict things in his life, and so on and so forth. Very superstitious times. When you get into the Renaissance,
Sort of the Dark Ages.
from the Dark Ages, and when you get into the Renaissance, they have these plagues. The bubonic plague comes through, and they can't understand that, and so they have to try and why is this happening to us? And instead of rationalizing, what they do is they believe that all life is a folly, and so you have these characters like the fool in King Lear, and the fool is always the one that states the truth,
right?
But
in a mischievous kind of way.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's the crazy people who are on the right side of truth during that period. Finally, we get up more recently, like into the Enlightenment. George III was the King of England during our Revolution, but he went mad several times.
Yeah.
And the solution they came up with during this time was to confine people away from the rest of society. So you
separate.
You had the Bedlam mental institution created, which was finally destroyed in 1815. But a woman who had attacked King George, tried to assassinate him, she was confined into Bedlam. And the king was confined many times. There was a regency. The Prince of Wales took over because he and then they found out that one of the things that was driving the king crazy was he was taking opium.
Right. So he was more of a drug addict.
He was a drug addict than being a kind of
Or
crazy.
today we say he was suffering from substance abuse disorder.
Right.
There you go.
Right.
There you go. And then finally we get up to the modern era where it's the psychiatrist becomes the expert and can make you normal. The whole Freudian psychology thing is it's bad to be abnormal, whatever that means. And so there's all of this stuff that goes on to try and make you normal with what's called the talking cure, which actually can be traced all the way back to Athens.
So now, the funny thing about that is it doesn't seem like as you're developing this archaeology, so to speak, and you're digging and getting deep into it, it didn't seem like they were considering it mental illness, though.
Not always, no.
Yeah. Yeah, so I find that interesting.
I mean, terminology, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Pass one on down to Uncle Craig. The terminology, too, it's saying people went mad, saying all these
Cheers.
different things.
L'chaim.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Indeed, lime, indeed.
Happy Hanukkah.
You got to look in the eye when you take your first sip.
That's right.
That's right.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, that's yummy.
That is pretty good, too, yeah.
We're
That's your
still-
recipe, Uncle Craig?
That's right.
It's actually James Bond's recipe from Casino Royale. And
Wow.
he puts that splash of vodka in to smooth out the gin.
Nice.
And
nice.
The Daniel Craig character betrays that because he only has vodka martinis. The real James Bond only had gin
only
martinis.
gin, absolutely.
So stop it, Daniel Craig.
We don't buy it.
We're mad at you.
What were we just saying? Oh, yeah, so you
Just
were
a
about to
shift
say.
in terminology, right? We're still dealing with being able to use the appropriate terms to understand this more from a clinical place. Historically, it's just like hysteria. You know what I mean? It's it's madness. It's chaos. Someone went mad. There's no actual study and I don't know about appreciation, but validating this as an actual illness or mental health or mental illness. Yeah, there's zero real care going.
So it seems like throughout history we're always in between either trying to accept the individual who we consider outside of what I would call, or what we call here on Mental Health Mondays, consensus norm. Figure out how to categorize that person some kind of way, whether it be a spiritual perspective that is outside of the consensus norm of how we consider things spiritually, or whether it be, some other type of social consensus norm that we feel like that person is outside of.
And that's what we did with gays up until 1968. Being homosexual was an abnormality in the psychiatric dictionary for America.
Is that just part of the human condition that we're always going to be dealing with other.
The other.
You know,
exactly.
the other as some kind of way, and we just can't really find a way to accept each other for as they are, and that being okay with everyone else.
Yeah, it threatens me if you're not like me.
Right.
Yeah.
That says I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And so I have to categorize you in some way that rationalizes you away and reinforces who I am.
Yeah.
And that's intolerance. And we
Right.
need to be tolerant of other people and other ways of living.
You know what I find is usually over time, those that have been treated in an intolerable way, they gain enough strength so that sooner or later they can also be intolerant of the former oppressors, if
Right.
that makes any sense. So that once we continue down that cycle, just goes around and round, and it's a rabbit hole that I'm almost getting hopeless.
Oh, well,
I
we've
feel
got
like I'm almost getting
I
hopeless.
get it though, because it's like it's at a time also in our country where it seems like things were like, okay, maybe we're kind of riding the ship, but things are still off the rails, and this desire to, I don't know, come together over things like that. I think that's why conversations like this are important, because we do need to accept that there has to be new rules going forward. Just to call people crazy or to believe that homeless people are just all drug addicts and their brains broke because they did too much meth.
Right.
Never the fact
Right.
there's like untreated mental illness,
Yeah.
all kinds of other things.
Yeah.
People just also don't want to accept that the world is a difficult place, and I think so then those people end up getting the shit end of the stick, so to speak.
That's a very good point. I wonder also, is it could it be that we need to also not try to make everyone agree all the time?
Yes, I think that's
You know
important.
what I mean?
Yeah.
You can have your perspective, and maybe I can say, ask you about it, talk to you about it, learn something from it, and I can choose to accept what about your perspective that I choose to accept, and then you can continue to have your perspective.
Right.
I can have mine. We don't always have to think in such a homogenous way.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like the only thing we can feel intolerant to is intolerance.
Yeah.
There's this like funny meme in terms of like people who are like, I just don't agree, with BLM, and it's like, listen, Karen, we can disagree on pizza toppings, but we can't disagree on racism. So there are levels to which we can agree to disagree, and then also like you can't be racist.
That's
bad.
true. That's true. That's true. And everyone should get to vote.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and I find that's an interesting point too, Will, that you're bringing up. That there is a line where, we need to have some type of consensus.
Yes.
We need some type of consensus.
Well, and I think, to get back to Will's area of expertise, I think Hollywood has helped us with that. When they, when you have a movie like Midnight Cowboy, an X-rated movie, the only one to win the Academy Award, about homosexuality,
Yeah.
and a friendship that's just remarkable, it makes us more tolerant when we identify with those characters.
it's true.
And there's so
It's
many
true.
other movies that, have done that for us, where we think we see something on film that we haven't seen before, and they get us to identify with those characters so that we become more tolerant.
Well, you know what? We're going to take a quick break right here, but as you're saying that, I bet you some of those movies couldn't be made today. Anyway, we're here with Craig and Will and our martinis. We'll be right back.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
When it comes to mental health, many people believe that therapy and self-help aren't necessary, when a simple prescription or a pill will suffice. The fact is, specific treatment for mental health problems varies depending on the individual and could include medication, therapy, and in many cases, both. Many individuals choose to build and work with a support system during the healing and recovery process. Having a good support system and engaging with trustworthy people are key elements to successfully talking about your own mental health, and it's often the first step to helping you heal, grow, and recover. A support system can include a trained mental health professional, a parent, a family member, a teacher, and or a faith leader. When building a support system, remember, in addition to good advice, look for someone who can assist you in taking action that will help. This message is brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically live my personality on my sleeve.
It's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
All right, Will, we started turning the corner to the film industry.
Yes.
And I was saying that I'm pretty sure that some of those movies, especially Midnight Cowboy, I'm not sure that it could be made today.
I mean, there's an element to which, like, we're also sort of floating, I think, artistically. When you're dealing with the arts, I was reading an interesting article recently about how younger generations, like millennials and Gen Z, can sometimes, in the progressive side of things, get in the way of actual progress because there's this feeling of if it isn't perfect or how I believe it's exactly supposed to be, then I can't have it.
Right.
And it's like
the baby goes out with the bathwater.
Right.
Yeah.
But everything takes steps in time and effective leadership and effective communication, teaching people new things about how to, if we're talking about mental health, like you can't just tell a bunch of people, like, listen, take this seriously. And if you don't take it seriously, I can't talk to you. Like, that's why you have this podcast, is to start this conversation.
Absolutely.
And a big movie, I mean, I think that's easy to circle in, that I actually feel like really started this conversation is a little bit later in kind of what I'd written down, but One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which that's obviously a group of guys, but you've got for the first time the book by Ken Kesey, and then also the movie itself treats these characters not they all have their bizarre personalities, but they're not treated like monsters or freaks.
Yeah.
You know, they're in this institution under the rule of this evil nurse who's really the villain, you know, and Jack Nicholson isn't technically one of them. He's kind of faking it, you know, but helps the audience also see that underneath all this, these men are good people. They're sweet, they're kind, they have feelings, and it isn't just like circus freak kind of people.
I wonder, because some of those older films really took the time to develop the character in ways that I don't see them developing characters these days.
Right,
you know what I mean? It's about the sensationalism, get to the action right quick. How far back does mental illness play into the film industry? Were they doing films based on that?
I mean, I would say the beginning in terms of the scary thing is that we would categorize characters as crazy or as hysterical, whatever it is. Because even back then, we didn't have the understanding we have of mental illness or mental health. So they were never approaching the writing from let's take this seriously, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there was some more empathetic treatment of it, but even movies like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which is Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, there's no outright discussion that Betty Davis's character, is quote-unquote mentally ill.
Right.
But all of her behavior is indicative of this narrative that Hollywood created since the beginning of being a crazy person. This is how crazy women behave. This is a woman specifically. This is hysteria.
Specifically women,
yes. And we know now that that's not true, but so thematically, these have always been stories, like even A Star is Born, right? Like, why is this person driven to suicide by this kind of thing? Is it just a lifestyle, or is there something else going on?
Well,
but they never break it down.
Well, here's an interesting question. Do you think, and I ask this of both of you guys, do you think that it is how we feel from a societal perspective driving the art that we make, or is the art actually influencing how we look at things from a societal perspective?
I think it goes both ways. I mean, you look at a movie made in the late 40s with Olivia de Havilland called Snake Pit.
Yeah.
And she gets committed into an insane asylum, and she's not insane. But how do you prove you're not insane?
Right.
You know, and it's very sympathetic as you go through this movie. It you know, people were just like, that's what goes on in an insane asylum.
Yeah.
You know, people are treated like that. That's horrible. And so you did have some of those breakthrough movies that awakened people to what was going on.
Which ultimately culminated in us getting rid of those types of institutions, which, again, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Once Reagan became president, we got rid of pretty much all of the mental institutions, even the ones that were actually doing some good.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it doesn't really seem like as a society we can get this right.
I mean, I think that's the thing is, like, I don't think in anybody's lifetime it's ever going to feel like right. And sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back is at least 1 step forward.
Right.
You know, and kind of to what you were saying in the beginning of the show is like, oh, this is just harder to accept the world that we live in. And it can really feel that way. I think it just depends on on the outlook and on the day, and on when you can zoom out, and take a look at progress. Like, it's all there.
Yeah.
Like, Make America Great Again is such a lie, because it's like, again, when
Yeah.
you mean when there was racism and
Yeah.
women and black people couldn't vote,
when black people were slaves,
right?
was that the great period?
Yeah, what is so great? So so we're always moving forward, but sometimes it does feel like there's that one step back moment, and film and art.
Or one administration back.
Yes.
Yeah. Where you can definitely speak to that.
That question of like, does life imitate art? Does art imitate life? And it is, I think, to Craig's point, it is both. And we have seen, I think now, especially with social media, it isn't just film now. It's just content in general, and the amount of messaging that we can get out to people of younger generations, both positive and negative, is overwhelming.
Yeah,
But you do have a lot of young people. Look, we can't fight for perfection, but at least they're fighting for a noble cause.
Well, if Marla was here, something that she's been saying all week, which is, it's not complacency, it is accepting what is the enemy of change.
Right.
Yeah.
Apathy.
Yeah.
Apathy is really a problem.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, it's sort of like on a curve that we're always striving, like you were saying, Will, to get to that perfect position and balance in society. Of course, we'll never reach it, because every time we get to a new plateau, it can be better.
Right.
Yeah.
It can be better.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Has it always been women who have been, I know traditionally it was the women who were hysterical
Right.
and not in their right mind. But I think nowadays the art that's being made, the industry in general, is actually starting to take a serious look at mental illness.
It is. And I think what's interesting is you do see, though, the difference between how men and women are treated in film stories, because it's always with women, not always, but often, right, they're portrayed as sort of the crazy ones.
Yeah.
With men, it's usually One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Is a sweetness to it. Rain Man, The Savant. There's the history of male characters with mental illness in film are much more like Sean Penn and I Am Sam. You know what I mean? Like the heartstrings kind of thing.
Yeah, or either that, or they've been so stressed out by things that just make sense that it will stress anybody out.
Yeah.
That we nowadays we know that it's actually PTSD.
Exactly.
But still, it makes sense, and their reaction is something that we can understand.
Yeah. The one place where it splits, and I think, is the horror genre, and that is a pretty even male to female treatment. Like, look at Norman Bates in Psycho, right? We were talking about multiple personality disorder. And that's a very real thing.
Yeah.
But horror is where the fear is built in these kinds of people. So psychos that we consider in real life, we don't validate their mental illness and their need for treatment, because we just assume that they're inherently evil. And that's also highly problematic.
So now, do we think that any of this is helpful when it comes to how we look at mental illness?
Yeah, I think, again, the many sides of it that you can show, the better it gets to making it more tolerant. I mean, even somebody like the Joker in Batman is you know, I mean, really crazy.
Absolutely. Or the Riddler.
Or the Riddler.
That's
Any
true.
villain, I guess.
Almost.
Who wants to kill a bunch of people?
Oh my goodness, we are having a great discussion and we have great drinks, so this can't be better. We'll be right back. All right, that music lets us know that it's poll time, and Marla's not here, so I'll just do a little dance and get it over with. I'm not used to being on the poll, but hey, you know what? Times change, and now it's me. Anyway, we weren't here. Actually, we were here last week, but we never did our guest didn't show last week, so we had to actually run a rerun at the last minute. We apologize for that. But the week before, our poll question was, and this is for Craig and Will.
Yes.
What percentage of Americans will meet the criteria for a diagnosable mental health condition at some point in their lifetime? That's 27%, 46%, or 62%.
I would guess 27.
I would also say 27.
All right. Oh man, it's 46%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So and you know, as with the pandemic, things are actually, I think, taking a turn for
Right.
the worst.
Yeah.
And hopefully we get past that. So here's the new poll question. You guys get another chance. What percentage of all global diseases are either mental, neurological, or substance abuse disorders? 3%, 7%, or 10%?
10.
Yeah.
Well, you got to tune in next week to find out if you got. You guys know the drill.
Yeah.
Find out if you get it right. And I want to remind you guys to text the word GIVE, GIVE, to 818-698-1021. Support A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign. Back to the show. All right. It's interesting that, Craig, you said that you do believe that we are, the more signs that we show, even the signs that sometimes are portrayed negatively, can have a positive impact on the way that we look at mental illness.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great moment on the floor of the United States Senate way back in the Reconstruction period where it's all going to hell. The North hates the South. The South hates the North. The South feels that they've been, crucified in the war. And the Southern senator gets up and he gives this great speech. And at the end of it, he says, if we get to know one another, then we can love one another. And people just started crying. And it led to a bipartisan moment on the floor of the Senate. And I think the more we know about mental illness, the more tolerant we become.
You know what? And that reminds me that speaking from a civic perspective, we might need some of that right now.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the divisions in this country are very significant, and they're being reinforced by social media. And it's very hard to break through to people. I mean, I've lost so many friends during the last 4 years.
As we all have.
It's awful.
So, Will, do you think that the way that we are literally, and I'm trying to say this as delicately as I possibly can, but we are so politically correct.
Yeah.
So some of those, I guess, some of the darker sides of certain issues like mental illness, I'm not sure that we can explore in the same way today that we used to explore in years before. What do you think about that?
I think it's perspective. It can feel that way, I think, because of the conversations, and we're over inundated with the phrases woke culture, political correctness.
Yeah.
Those are phrases that are created for legitimate purposes to say, like, this is the work that we're trying to do, and then a certain political party will take them and kind of manipulate them.
Yeah.
But the thing is if you went back to that, let's say in the 70s when they're making One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, we might have this feeling, this is the Make America Great Again feeling, which is we could be more frank about this back in the day. We also had a lot less science on our side 50, 40 years ago than we do now. And even though it feels like we're overly politically correct, what you're feeling is the difficulty of change taking place. That complacency is not happening. You and us, and ideally most people, are working to be better, to become better. And if something makes you uncomfortable, this is important. That's good.
So here's another follow-up question to this on this same line. What filmmaker today do you think is actually taking the most risk as they explore some of these types of areas?
Like without fear of cancellation and all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely.
That's a really good question, actually.
All right, for next time, maybe think about that.
It's going to be like a French director. It's always somebody who's not American. Yeah, that is a good question.
Yeah.
Craig, do you feel like you have somebody top of mind?
Well, I mean, Spielberg's Fabelmans, which is his big movie this year, is going to introduce you to, a young man growing up in a Jewish family. And here we are at Hanukkah, so it's all appropriate.
Yeah.
I think he's always been courageous in
absolutely
looking at. I mean, he looks at the alien and can make that really frightening. I mean, it's one of his things.
Or can make it equally as endearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And E.T.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's an amazing career that he's had.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to see that. By the way.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I read a little bit about his history, and even before they said it, I knew it was semi-autobiographical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be a great movie. Anyway, you guys, parting last words for the Mental Health Mondays family.
It always goes by so fast.
It does. You know
it
what?
Does, yeah. I mean, my parting word is just tolerance. There's so little tolerance out there.
Yeah.
It's gotten worse during the Trumpian years, and we just need to get back to being tolerant, to being civil to one another.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
Let us make an argument and not throw the turkey at me.
Yeah, let's listen before we start talking maybe sometimes.
I think in sort of the vein of that 2 steps forward, 1 step back is still at least 1 step forward, still at least progress. But keep in mind that, what's the phrase somebody else coined? The perfect is the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's not about perfection. It's just about trying to do good.
Yeah.
And don't try for perfect. And don't hold other people to perfect standards because it's not real.
Even when you disagree, let's try to treat each other with respect.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about that?
Absolutely.
You guys, Will, thank you so much. Dr. Craig,
Cheers.
thank you so
Cheers.
much. Cheers. You guys, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Holidays in general. We love you right here on Mental Health Mondays. Thank you, Will Sterling, Dr. Craig Smith. You guys are amazing. Every time you come into the show, you're our guest. You bring something that is unexpected and equally entertaining.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you. Next time we'll up our cocktail game.
There
We'll
you
do
go.
it.
Now, next time I'm making.
Okay.
There you go. It's a deal.
deal.
See you guys in a couple of weeks.